This is the Investor Connect podcast program. I'm Hall T. Martin. I'm the host of this show in which we interview angel investors, venture capital, family offices, private equity, and many other investors for early stage and growth companies. I hope you enjoy this episode. Interested in learning more about investing in startups, launching a new startup and need to raise funding? The Startup Funding Espresso is a daily podcast in a short, concise format delivered to your inbox every day, Monday through Friday. In the time it takes to drink an espresso, you can learn about startup funding. To subscribe, go to investorconnect.org and put your email into the pop-up box. Well, hello, this is Hall Martin with Investor Connect. Today I'm here with John Oamen, co-founder and CEO at CutStruct Technology Limited. CutStruct Technology is a prop tech company aimed at unlocking the next 1 million homes in Africa by improving the construction business environment, leveraging technology as an enabler into the specific areas of how stakeholders buy, hire for, and manage their projects. John, thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Hall. It's my pleasure to be here.
So what was your background before co-founding CutStruct Technology? What did you do before this?
Fantastic. I actually started my career in the real estate sector as a salesperson. I sold real estate, and I found that I enjoyed it, or rather I did it well. And, one of the years I tried to, do kind of like a debrief with myself to see why I sold well. And it occurred to me that it was because I was able to show people how to use their spaces. Typically, I came in contact with a lot of buyers, who would typically have a $2 budget but need a $10 space. And so I kind of had to be able to show them how to fit their $10 worth of stuff into their $2 budget, if you know what I mean. And opened a whole new business because at some point I got people saying, could you just do it for me? And so I took a quick interior design course and I started my interior design journey from there after I realized I was making a lot more money doing that than actually selling the properties. And then I found that I had a knack for it. And so I built a team around it and I started a business called Faultless Finish. And that basically was a construction finishing, business. Now, over time, I grew around the space because I now started doing finishing and then I got into construction as well. Always managing a team. I think I've just always had entrepreneurship in my bloodline. So I did this for about 8 years before, founding CutStruct.
That's great. And so you started CutStruct and it's now growing very well. It sounds like you're getting a lot of traction there.
Yeah. I mean, we encountered some of the challenges in the space, right? While I was doing construction, one of the things I realized is that back home we didn't have a lot of data, and so we kind of ran blind on things. You see big construction projects where all the data is captured, via pen and paper, very traditional means. And you don't even want to look through this data because it's not properly captured. Sometimes there's bad spelling, people are not properly putting things down. And one of the times, there was an incident where something worth a lot of money, what would be approximately $6,000 for you, got missing, right? And there was no way of tracking how this had gone from hand to hand. So the client walks in one day and says, 1, 2, 3, 4 of you were here. You are going to pay for it equally. And so you have people getting to pay for stuff that they probably don't even know anything about just because they were present. And it occurred to me that this was a gap, that needed to be filled. We needed to be able to capture construction data in a better way. It's appealing, and stakeholders can find more useful. Also, more importantly, that could be cloud-based. Why store something here when you can store it in the cloud and retrieve it from anywhere in the world?
Well, that's great. So what's your advice for people investing in this construction space in Africa? What do you tell them to do before they write that check?
Wow, that's a great question. I think one of the most important things to know is that we run a very, very different terrain. Typically, the rules of engagement here will probably not be the same rules of engagement from wherever you're coming. So one of the first things you need to do is talk to industry professionals and get a lot of perspectives before you write any checks. The most tedious job, you need to do is to try to understand the space and the dynamics of the space that you're trying to get into. We have very, very a very, very different terrain or culture, and the way that construction and construction-related projects, happen here and are successful, are not very typical. And so consulting with a professional is very important. The other thing is making sure you understand, the purpose for which you're trying to invest. Are you trying to invest for legacy? The dynamics will be different. Are you trying to invest, for 10x, 20x? The dynamics will be different. And you need to be willing to go all the way, in line with the dynamics you're trying to work with. One of the things we're trying to do at CutStruct is get to a point where we're able to walk people through the process of starting a project up to handing over. And what that means is that we help you hire the right professionals. After we've taken in your brief and we understand what you're trying to do, we help you hire the right professionals. We show you where to get your materials from. And then we provide the monitoring tool that helps you monitor your projects to make sure that you're achieving, your objectives as set. And even when you're not, you understand it in good time to be able to make adjustments where necessary. And we can deliver your projects for you. But like I said, it's very important, two things for you to understand the purpose for which you're investing, and very importantly, to get a lot of perspectives. That is tedious work because you have to listen to a lot of people, but it's definitely worth it before you cut that check.
Right. Well, let's talk about the state of investing in the construction industry in Africa. How do you see the industry evolving? Where is it going at this point?
So I think we have a very huge housing deficit, so it's very, very buoyant industry. The industry is thriving and is growing. Importantly, in certain parts of Africa, other forms of investment, including the portfolio investments, have more or less taken a dip over the last few years. And so what has happened is that, the funds in Africa have had to move more towards construction. Also, there's a huge and a growing market of people who are making a lot more money and looking to have a piece of home, either as an investment or a place where they want to live. And so there's a lot of activity going on in the construction space. COVID has recently, altered the dynamics of things a little bit, I'll say, because, now, people are moving more towards having homes where they can have, offices, workspaces, play spaces, and trying to have a lot more things around their home than building offices. But the construction industry is definitely still thriving. Statistics show us that it's basically growing at roughly 5.6% year on year. In Nigeria, particularly, it has grown in the last, say, roughly this year. The first half of this year, it's shown a significant surge as a lot of activity is going on. The advent of prop tech as well has also helped, the construction industry be a lot more buoyant because people are now able to do things like, virtual inspections, are able to close transactions from anywhere in the world. So it's generally growing. I think one of the things that has happened is that some of the prop tech companies that have been set up in the past 3 to 5 years have shown a lot of, they've grown a lot, and that has brought a lot of attraction, to the industry. People now recognize that we have a buoyant industry and an industry that is interesting, So I think it's definitely somewhere to look at, over the next 5 to 10 years or 10 to 15 years, actually. And there's significant room for growth, in that space.
Great. How many companies are engaged in this sector right now?
Wow, that's a tough question to answer in the sense that there are quite a lot and growing. In Nigeria alone, we have upward of 500 companies in the space, and those are the ones that are registered. We have a lot of companies doing business that are not necessarily statutory or legal entities, but are being used, or more like not captured as construction companies. For a variety of reasons, people can capture, companies as more or less like general contractors. So they're not captured as construction companies, but they're engaged, in construction. A few of them have been, quite successful in the prop tech space. We have companies like Split who are currently, doing a large seed round, and other companies. I mean, one of my colleagues just raised about $500,000, for prop tech. So it's a growing space where we're looking to see how that number can increase as we basically do, what we do. One of the things that we do at CutStruct is that we're trying to help people we're trying to make the industry a bit more accessible and transparent, right? And we believe that people would definitely, dabble into things that they understand. So if we bring about more understanding, then you have more players coming into the industry. As long as the industry continues to stay opaque or stay fuzzy, there's less participation. But we believe that over the next 5, to 10 years, there'll be a lot more participation, and these numbers will, possibly triple over time. That will help with, the industry dynamics. It will also help with things like GDP, but importantly, it will help in making sure that we're reducing the number of homeless people, on the streets that don't have homes, especially as we force prices, of construction down by cutting away a lot of inefficiencies and the likes.
Great. Well, you talked about some of the challenges in the space a moment ago about tracking expenses and so forth. But aside from that, what are the other challenges you see coming up for this area?
Well, I think importantly, the fact that there are a lot of what you will call institutional voids, basically that, have held, Africa back a bit, and I'll explain. So, for example, even after you buy products, right, the logistics around fulfillment of projects, of products can be an issue, right? So those are some of the challenges that, we're looking into, and we're hoping that a lot more people are looking into. If we can have a better outlay of infrastructure, that will help things like logistics. There's no construction without logistics. You need to move materials to site. You need to move people to site. So things like logistics are very important challenges that we still face. Access to basic things like internet, which is growing, but still we need to do a little bit better, because for people to be able to apply best practices, best methods, they need to have access to, the basic things like internet. It looks like you want to say something. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Oh yeah. Okay, great. So so logistics is a major thing that we need to look at as an issue affecting, also documentation. A lot of our statutory documentation agencies are still very analog, right? And what that means is that you can't tell how long it'll take for you to get the documentation or the title of your property when you purchase them. It typically takes too long. It goes through too many processes that are not necessarily, important or efficient. Also, there's still a lot of fraud in that area. So, you have people wanting you to pay, for stuff that you typically shouldn't pay for. So these are some of the things that, we're currently working on to see how we can grow.
Cool. Well, tell us more about CutStruct technology itself. Exactly how do you work, and how does it, what's the business model, and where are you going with it?
Fantastic. CutStruct was formed from 2 words: cutting cost in construction. So CutStruct, and that's how we came about the name. Technology. So CutStruct, cutting cost in construction with the use of technology. And what do we do basically? We're building a platform that has, a variety of suites of products, that basically help people around how they buy, like I said, how they hire, and how, of course, they manage their projects. We have a kind of like a hybrid, business model where we have the marketplace, for individual buyers who want to buy, products in limited quantity. What we're trying to do is we're trying to have an escrow system that helps them, protects the buyer, where you pay money to the system, right? And then the money is only released to the vendor after you've confirmed receipt, right? So we're setting up an escrow system. And over time, one of the things we want to be able to do is to, create a form of debt financing as well for people to be able to buy products as at when they need and be able to finance it over time through their paychecks. The other thing we're doing is that we're integrating with a company that deals with handymen, and what they do is they basically vet vendors, people who are painters, who are plumbers, and people who provide these services. And we want you to be able to pick vetted vendors from our platform, pay for them before they engage, but also, like I said, we run an escrow system that makes sure that you are satisfied with the work that they've done before the payments move. What we're basically doing is we're trying to breed trust. One of the biggest issues in our industry currently is the fact that, there's the lack of trust based on a lot of, bad experiences that people have had. So for us, we want to, make it easier for people to access good labor. We also are coming up with training programs to be able to train, these artisans on best practices, ethics, and of course their skill. But we've noticed that it's beyond just skill. A lot of people even already have the technical skill, but some of the other, behavioral problems that we have, including, poor work ethics, not showing up in time. You hear things like African time, it becomes a thing, and it shouldn't be. You want to show up 2 minutes or 5 minutes before you said you will, as against 30 minutes after. So we're setting up training programs for these guys to make sure that people can come in and they can get reliable hands, to execute their projects. And then the third part of it is the project monitoring part of it, where we're building a tool where remotely you can see your project valuation real time. The idea is that you start a project, right? You set out to spend X, and we want you to see how you're doing per time. We want you to be able to track your costs, track your time, and track, the quality of the work that you're doing. That way you're able to make informed decisions. And even where, things go wrong, you're able to question and drill down and to see why, and hopefully do better on your next project. We also want you to be able to know where your expenses are going, right? We worked with a company, in our first more or less like prototype testing, right? And one of the things we discovered was that they were spending so much on bricks. They needed to be able to set up a brick molding factory. Now seeing this data was able to make, they were able to make a decision to start molding their own bricks. And even where they have excess capacity, they now make an extra income from bricks. What that means is that they were able to save, on their cost of bricks. And importantly, they were able to begin to make more money, from their excess capacity. And that generally helps the business. It means they're going to turn over more homes. It means they're going to be able to give more discounts and make, the buyer's entrance a little less steep than it used to be. We believe all these things will have a ripple effect in the sense that it will begin to affect the business environment positively. More people will have access to homes, and even the businesses will be healthier. So these are the areas which CutStruct is trying to help. We understand that the industry is a giant one. It's one of those things that you can't totally, you can't solve all the problems yourself, but we believe in focusing in that little aspect and making sure that we're making consistent progress there.
Well, great. Well, it sounds like you're making good progress with it and having good success. In the last few minutes that we have here, what else should we cover that we haven't?
I think importantly, we've covered most of it. One of the things that, we can talk about are the challenges, of doing business in this space. Like I said, I think I talked about that mostly. Yeah, so I think that's about it. If you want to ask me any more questions, I'm happy to answer.
Well, my last question is how best for listeners to get back in touch with you?
Fantastic. So you can reach me on all my social media platforms. I try to use my name for most of them. I'm very active on Instagram and on LinkedIn. So if you search with my name, John Oamen, the links will be up there for you to see. But if you search with my name, John Oamen, you'll definitely find me on Instagram and on LinkedIn. And of course, as the conversations go further, I'll probably give you access to my personal phone number as well. I'm happy to take any calls when necessary, and always happy to talk about Africa and what we're doing here. Thank you so much, Hall.
Great. Thanks for joining us today. We'll include those in the show notes and hope to have you back for a follow-up soon.
It'll be nice. I look forward to it as well. We have a couple of very interesting sprints. And I think that the end of the year, this year, will be a good time to have more conversation to see how far we've gone.
Very good. Investor Connect helps investors interested in startup funding. In this podcast series, experienced investors share their experience and advice. You can learn more at investorconnect.org. Hall T. Martin is the director of Investor Connect, which is a 501c3 nonprofit dedicated to the education of investors for early-stage funding. All opinions expressed by Hall and podcast guests are solely their own opinions and do not reflect the opinion of Investor Connect. This podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be relied upon as a basis for investment decisions.